Peter here, you there? How many different creative introductions did I think of when I was working at WFAN, which was one of my first internships when I was in college, which was interesting. For those of you who know anything about this, Chris Garrett, great to see you. We are going to be able, and a hello to everybody who is joining us tonight. So I guess you could say this is the first official Pontificating with Pete. And now that the social media has been crossed over, Colin, I think we could actually add Twitter back. I think that'd be okay. I assume that that'd be okay. But here we are. The branding continues to evolve. And this is good to see you too, Jimmy Zimzam. Yeah, this is I certainly would like to have our esteemed partner here to talk about these things, but she's obviously got other obligations, and we respect her for that. But my goodness, are we living in a very unique time right now? Unlike anything else that I think well, certainly not in our lifetime. We haven't seen anything this close to fascism like we're seeing right now. That's why it gets so ridiculous when people would talk about, oh my God, we're living in a fascist state and all that. And it's like, no. Now you're living in a fascist state. Now it's for real. Because now you're seeing just how serious this gets. We're gonna have to adjust that as well, Colin. Can't say that anymore either. So we got to take that away. Just have to pretend like she's not here. That's the way it's going to be. And look at that. And I think we could probably drag that into another location if we tried. I'm not a fan of going solo. I mean, I know that there are things that I could talk about, but I'm excited tonight. And we're going to try to get back onto a regular routine, which should be, which will be fun and welcomed, where we're going to be able to have regular guests. Tonight, we were actually supposed to have Jordan Chariton, my good friend over at Status Coup, but he has been, as you can imagine, burnt out from obviously going back and forth to Flint, and then, of course, making the rounds on a lot of different podcasts. Of course, he understands that I can accept us being a small but mighty channel, that if we're going to have a conversation, it's going to be on his terms, which I'm totally fine with. So that's no big deal. And so my understanding is that we'll have that conversation next week. Jen is going to be doing her final interview prior to the election. It is going to be scheduled for Monday night. I don't know if I'm going to do any live on Monday. Monday is my birthday, 41 years young. So we'll see what happens. But Jen is going to be speaking with Reza Aslan, who I believe is a Palestinian activist, if I'm not mistaken. Big Dumb Animal, it is great to have you here, my friend. Well, we're happy to have you here too, Mr. Maven. We're happy to have everybody here. Tony, it's great to see you. Donald James, great to see you guys. So the show must go on, as the saying goes, and the show will go on because that's what we're doing. We are going to continue to transform politics into service up until at least the day of August 20th. I think you all know what that date is. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to do my very best to go live Mondays and Thursdays as we normally would. I have a very busy schedule right now, as you guys can imagine, juggling a lot of different things, but I think it is important to come on here and talk about these very key issues. Somebody filled Donald James in as to the whereabouts of my partner. What's going on? Why isn't that person here? Why is it just me? I know it's not as fun if it's just me. And I know that I'm not the star. I'm more of the sidekick. And now I have to play the role of the leader, the band leader, if you will. And we'll see how that works out. I am cautiously optimistic it will go relatively well. And believe me, if you guys know anything about the importance of getting a good night's sleep, exercising, and eating right, essential to do the days that I do, where basically I am going nonstop, for anywhere from 12 to 16 hours a day. That's a lot. It's a lot for anybody. It is certainly a lot for me. This is supposed to be somewhat of a relief, but right now I'm working on empty because I haven't eaten in several hours, but I know I'm going to eat afterwards. So I haven't decided yet what that's going to be, but I'm going to have to cook for myself. So ideas are always welcome. I'm thinking it's probably a little too late to cook salmon. It'll probably be some type of an egg dish of some kind. I believe that breakfast for dinner is one of the best meals you could possibly have. It'll be a late dinner, but it'll be a good one nonetheless. Oh, there's plenty of banter, Chris. It's just not happening on the YouTube channel. It's happening offline. The banter will always continue. And I think it's important to recognize that the biggest reason why I am flying solo is because we want to stay within the rules and make sure that we're not stepping on anybody's toes. And Lord knows the venture would be the right word, but the undertaking that is being done right now by my partner in crime is one where the person that this undertaking is being done against will look for anything, for any reason, at any time, to try to knock us off our perch. So it is best to do it the right way at all times. And that's the way it's going to be. And that's the way it should be. Like I said, the interview that will take place on Monday night will almost assuredly not be with me. It will be solo. We are really going to do our due diligence to keep these things separate. But what I will point out that I hope you guys will do, and I'm going to put this out there right now. So as you can see the name right there she blows, Pontificating with Pete. That is the name of the social media channel handles that I am now operating on Instagram, on Twitter. Haven't really done anything with Facebook yet. I'll probably get that up shortly. Still try to fight the power when it comes to TikTok. I don't really feel that I have I don't really feel I have the need per se for TikTok. I think that resharing any of Jen's videos is probably the best course of action. So anything that you see will already have been done by the campaign, and we just want to make sure that it's getting out there and that the views are where they need to be. So that's sort of the lay of the landscape. But remember, you can by all means always get involved. We appreciate anybody and everybody's help. And the same is true for anybody who is here now who is a sponsor of the channel. We're going to scroll the names right now. It is a small but mighty channel, but it is one that we very much appreciate your support. And one of the main topics of conversation this evening when Amy arrives is going to be about this. The Constitution of the United States, which seems to be eroding every single day that we allow the United States of Israel to run roughshod over our nation. And I think it goes without saying that this legislation that apparently is going to pass, that good old Wasserman Schultz is at the front of the lines advocating for, is basically going to, I can't even describe, you know, Colin, if you grab the tweet from Ryan Grimm a little bit earlier, he basically lays it out in full detail, very succinctly in one tweet, how devastating this anti-free speech, pro-Israel legislation, if you want to even call it that, is being passed. It is devastatingly dangerous, but we already knew that we were heading down this very dangerous path. Be it as it may, the reason this is happening is because they are going through, I don't know if they're going through the death throes just yet, but what they are going through is a major, major transition in terms of the mask unveiling of the broken system. There is no question that we are heading in that direction. This is but it is a very dangerous time because, as we know, the protesting that is going on the college campuses, it's now getting violent, and it's getting violent on the behalf of the pro-Israel side, and the police state is doing nothing about it. Of course not. Well, why would they? They know where their bread is buttered. That's why when people constantly harp on this idea that, you know, police are the problem. Yeah, there is a problem with policing in the United States, but never forget who they take their orders from. Their orders are a directive. It comes down, and it would it would be foolhardy not to recognize that they're basically just taking orders. If somebody says go out there and smash heads, they're going to do it because that's, I mean, listen, it's not like a lot of them don't want to do it, but they just need to hear, oh yeah, go ahead, kill, kick them in the head, do what you got to do. Send a clear message that we will not take dissent, not against this. Because remember, the reason why Israel is so important is because it is our outpost in the Middle East, as has been pointed out by a lot of people, including RFK. So without further ado, I believe Channel 11. There are not enough people there saying what you were saying, I suppose. Well, I'm not sure where you're going with that, Channel 11, but thanks for checking in. I prefer Channel 4, NBC. That's usually where I get my, well, if I'm ever going to watch any of the corporate news, but that's very rare. So with that said, I believe our esteemed guest is here. I only see a image, but we're going to try. For those of you who know AmyeC3, she has been a guest on our podcast before. She is a Twitch streamer on the West Coast and somebody who lives very close to one of the universities that has become ground zero for a lot of this activity that is going on the college campuses, which of course is UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. And yeah, it's a pretty rough go about. So let's see what we can do. I believe you're there. Amy, welcome back to Pontificating.
Hi, I wonder why my camera is not working. Hold on for a second.
Oh yeah, well, that's what I was wondering because I saw it I saw it down below and I wasn't sure, so I didn't want to make any assumptions.
I feel like every time I'm on your show,
there's a technical difficulty of some kind?
Yes, of course.
Oh, it's just bad karma. It's just bad karma.
What do you think you did in another life to deserve this?
You know what? I'm not really sure. What did I do in another life to deserve having such bad karma? I wouldn't necessarily say I have bad karma. I would say that because I'd like to think I provide good karma. But in terms of the bumps in the road, I think the best way that I could describe it is that I always feel like I'm getting really close to something and it being successful and productive. And then lo and behold, it doesn't happen. It's like that commercial with the guy with the dollar with the fishing rod. Oh, you almost had it. You got to be quicker than that. That's what it feels like. That's what a lot of my evolution in life has been about. Should we try again? Because now I don't even see a background. I guess we'll give it a minute, see if anything comes up. But that is the funny thing about doing live streams is that you only get one shot to get it right. Well, not even that, but there's going to be mistakes that are going to be made. So you have to keep that in mind. Oh, I saw a flash. There we go. So now I think it is appropriate to bring AmyeC3 onto Pontificating with Pete.
Yes, I actually just had to stop going live and I'm going to reconnect because I was not going to waste another second of your time. So
you're not wasting any of my time. If anything, I am extremely grateful. You have a big channel, and anytime big channels want to come on our small but mighty channel, it is always appreciated because that brings more eyeballs to our channel. That's the way I see it.
Right on. So, I mean, I don't consider myself a big channel at all. I just think I'm doing the best that I can. If that makes sense.
I think we're all trying to do the best we can. But it is kind of hard to look around at everything that's going on right now and not wonder. I mean, again, there is a reason why hopelessness, I think, kicks in for so many people. And especially with your fight for fair housing, especially in Southern California, there is no question that with what's going on these college campuses right now, especially at UCLA, that this is, I think people want to pretend that our country is something that it isn't. And now they're recognizing in full view that, no, it really is that bad.
I do think that a lot of people are waking up to the realization that the American dream is dead when thinking about housing in particular. But I think a lot of people are realizing just how militaristic the Democratic Party is. They are just as beholden to the interests of capital. They are just as likely to side with the ruling class with the main narrative, whatever is acceptable. They are part of the cultural hegemony in which, we have seen over and over again, they are representing, large factions of powerful, not even large in terms of like numbers, but they are making sure to represent the interest of the most, the richest people, the most politically influential. This is not a democracy. I think a lot of people are waking up to that.
So the question is going to become, how do we unite around what I've always maintained, even though you and I had our little banter a number of months ago about the fact that I cannot deny that I am a capitalist. I'm in commercial real estate. I would be a bold-faced liar to suggest that I don't believe in a free market or that I don't participate in it. But what I do believe in is I do believe in a labor revolution. I've always maintained that the balance between the working class and the managerial class is something that has been completely turned on its head for the past 40 plus years. I know everyone wants to say that it's all because of Reagan, but it's not true. Reagan is depicted as the one that, caused it. But the truth of the matter is we've been heading in this direction for a very, very long time. And it's accelerated to such a unmeasurable degree over the past several years. And now that you're adding Israel, which is there are outposts in the Middle East. They are outposts to the sources of raw materials and energy that allow us to maintain our position at the top, which could come crashing down at any moment. And the way things are going right now, it's hard to imagine that there isn't some type of a revolutionary circumstance that's happening right now.
I think that makes sense. I do think that it's hard not to blame Reagan for the vast majority of our problems as well, but I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on that one. But I do like that you're actually, in favor of a labor revolution. How do you feel about a general strike?
I think a general strike is fine. I think that, like anything, and no, I cannot say that I was fully responsible because I don't remember half the things I was doing at that time when I was passing that legislation in the 80s. But
it's pretty good.
All kidding aside, I think that the balance between labor and I've always said, well, you say it's a managerial class, but the truth is that it's labor and shareholders. I do not understand how we live in a country where we value shareholders more than labor, because shareholders don't do anything. They just move the money.
You still love capitalism? It's capitalism. That's just the way the capitalism operates.
I think I've mentioned this before. I believe in a hybrid system. I think you need to have, if you are going to have equal parts capitalism, you must have equal parts socialism. There is no other way to do it. It has been proven, and you can say it's a social democracy. But if you take a little bit of what works in other parts of the world, whether it's in Japan, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in Scandinavia, there are places in the world that you can look to, and you'll observe that their ability to run their country, their government, is exceptionally better than ours. Ours really is the wild, wild west. I mean, you're in California, I'm in Florida, and
hell of a place to be, Florida.
Of course. Well, I mean, look, two of the most expensive places in the country to live, South Florida and Southern California. Yep. We're on the front lines of this all the time. And it is devastating that people cannot afford to live. And now it's really, like the mask is just being completely removed, because there is a genocide in real time that is taking place. And there is just no way for them to sweep this under the rug anymore. But what they're trying to do is basically turn us into a full-blown fascist state.
We already are, I think. What makes you think that we're not? I guess would be my question.
Well, they're not hiding it now. Now they're just doing it. And this is a perfect transition, because now we're going to play the clip from UCLA. Obviously, you've probably seen it. But for those of you who have not been paying attention, there are rules for thee, but not for ye. That is how this works. So understand that when it comes to anything that the Free Palestine movement does, it is, whether it's looked at with a fine-tooth comb and whether they do anything wrong or not, overwhelmingly they don't, that doesn't mean that the pro-Israel crowd has to act the same way, and they don't. In fact, they're basically probably even told, hey, you can do what you want. So here we go. Now, you know that there are some that are doing their job because this is what they've been told to do. But you know that there is a very nice portion of these guys that love this shit, that absolutely love playing commando, that absolutely love being able to smash things and physically intimidate, if not outright hurt people. I think a lot of them do get off on it, and that's why you don't see any of them saying, you know what, I can't do this. I'm going to stand on the other side. I think there are too many of them that really do enjoy basically picking on people that really are not capable of physically standing up to them. If this was an even match, I don't think they'd be as tough as they are. But that's my thought.
Are you talking about the cops, or are you talking about like the pro-Israeli counter-protesters? Just want to make sure I'm on the same page with you. A little bit of both. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we've seen, like, if you remember reclaiming our houses era, it was in California. It was after Moms for Housing. It was a similar approach to occupying homes that had been kind of moved to the process of eminent domain. They were vacant because the state didn't move forward with their plans to extend an existing freeway. And so it was the Highway Patrol who went in and they viciously removed these families around Thanksgiving of 2020, if I recall correctly. Might have been 2019. 2020 sounds more accurate. And we've seen this kind of violence from them before, so it's not necessarily new on that front. But in terms of the Zionist pro-Israeli counter-protesters, yes, they seemed far too eager to be able to use the authority that they were given, either, de facto, because the cops just weren't there to stop them, or there was, I guess, whispers on that campus during that time that the cops seemed to have just outsourced some of this brutality to these counter-protesters who were literally shooting bottle rockets and fireworks into the encampments and pepper spraying and bear spraying these kids, and they were the ones who were violent. They were the ones who were able to be violent. If the pro-Palestinian demonstrators even tried to be half as violent as those pro-Israeli counter-protesters, the cops would have already came in and would have taken full advantage of their riot gear. And that's the difference.
Yeah, there's no question. I agree. I have no doubt that this, and we'll get to the details of it, but we got one more clip I want to play, and I'll share my sentiments on it. But this is the pro-Israel crowd reaction to the Free Palestine protesters on these campuses. I'm sorry, as somebody who's Irish, I would love for some dude like that to try that shit with me. Like that like I'm not a violent person, but I can be one if I have to be. And these they're very much they got a lot of courage when they've got a lot of their own around them, but they're not very courageous when it's just them by themselves.
Right. They are, I think, emboldened when they are part of a group, for sure. There's something else that seems a little bit more insidious, and that is what appears to be a sense of entitlement to the invocation of suffering of the Palestinian people, of anyone who stands in favor of Palestinians' right to exist. They do feel as though it is their obligation to use violent force to stop any mobilization here on these campuses, which I think is a broader reflection of what Israel does every goddamn day to Palestinians in the West Bank as well as Gaza. And that entitlement to violence, that monopoly on violence that Israel undoubtedly has, I think has been reflected on some of these campuses in the last couple of days, especially on UCLA's campus.
What has been sort of what has been the feeling? Because the thing about UCLA that's unique, comparatively speaking, to a school like USC, is that while USC is the private university and it obviously costs a lot more money, USC, I think, borders on, I want to say, Inglewood. It's not in a great area, but UCLA is in a very nice part of LA.
It's in West Hollywood.
Yeah, so it attracts a lot of, for those of you who don't know about Southern California, UCLA it's a very unique school. It's probably the number one, if you're young and you're looking to get into the entertainment business and you want to go to film school, UCLA is probably the number one school in the country. So you get a lot of people from all over the US that go there, but then you also get a lot of the more affluent class of people that are in places like Beverly Hills, Bel Air, Hollywood, Calabasas, places like that. Like, this is where they go to school. And so there's no question that the one thing that I've personally noticed, and especially being in SoCal, I'm sure you can probably speak to this more so, the type of people that are here that are on the side of pro-Israel, these are not people that are coming from places like Whittier and Reseda. They're coming from places like Sherman Oaks. That's where they're coming from. These are affluent people who have never been told no in their life, and especially Zionist Israelis. Like, that's on a whole other level of entitlement that I don't think people truly understand, which is why a guy like that flies out of the crowd from his very safe suburban dwelling that he's coming from and just starts physically assaulting somebody without them even seeing it happening. Because I guess in their mind, their attitude is, well, no one's going to touch me. No one's going to put me in my place. I get to do whatever the hell I want. And they really do feel that they're entitled to do whatever they want, which is why they look at a genocide and think, well, it's justified. That's how they look. Honestly, they really have this mindset that it is acceptable. They really do believe that.
I do think that there is something to be said about how the longstanding history of Jewish suffering as a result of the Holocaust has been so disgustingly weaponized that it is a real fear that Zionists might have. And I really didn't start, to use your term, pontificating on this until recently.
You owe me $5 for that one.
Okay. Well, there was a conversation we were listening to on chat, and it was talking about how a Jewish person has attested to their own fight or flight response that is triggered when they hear from the river to the sea, that it is a real thing that is happening within them. It is a real threat to their safety, and it is informed by their years of indoctrination that they have experienced going to a Zionist school, being raised in a Zionist home, because their lives are pretty much based on lies, based on what their schools told them, what they have been told about Palestinians, and what they want to do to Jewish people, as well as the state of Israel. And there is a real threat there to one's safety that I think is difficult to include in the equation when we're talking about real versus imaginary threats. Because what we have seen thus far is that our elected officials, our school administrators, they have inevitably sided with the perceived or imaginary threats that Jewish kids are experiencing on these college campuses. And we have seen them also turn around and use whatever force or violence that they are capable of to bring about physical harm, bodily injury to those who are siding with the rights of Palestinians to live freely out from under the thumb of the Israeli stronghold that has kept them in peril, that has locked them in the world's largest concentration camp, that has dehumanized them, that has subjugated them. They live under violent military occupation. They live under an apartheid regime. And anybody who is trying to bring attention to this has been met with actual blunt force in some instances. So
I agree.
I think it's a really difficult thing to try to acknowledge, because I do think that there's a real provocation to the internalized fear, as well as some paranoia even.
Oh yeah. No, there's indoctrination there. There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
That is part of it. And I think it doesn't help, not just the fact that these particular Zionist communities are extremely affluent, they're also extremely sheltered and insulated.
Yes.
So they, where I come from on the East Coast, there is a part of upstate New York which it's all Jewish. It's like all Zionists. It's kind of like I know it's kind of a cliche as a reference point, but like in the movie Dirty Dancing, that was a real thing. Like all the Jewish families, like they vacationed or summered, if you will, up in the Catskills, and so I remember when I was driving across the state when I went up there last summer for my friend's birthday that was on Lake Seneca. And I ended up driving across the state to go back to New Jersey. And at the time when I did that drive, I ended up driving through this community. I can't remember the name of it, but what I can tell you is that it is one of those communities that is like every storefront is in Hebrew. It's like that. And for these communities, they really do shun the outside world. But now that the veil is kind of being removed regarding how some of these communities have operated for quite some time when it comes to the subjugation of certain people, particularly the Palestinians, I think that they've been used to just screaming and shouting anti-Semitism from the top of their lungs, and it's always worked. It's always worked, but it's not working this time. And they don't know what to do now.
Right. I do think that it's new. Most people aren't familiar with, and up until this point, like people didn't know what was happening to Palestinians.
This is on a whole other level now. And we've experienced this down here in Broward County. There are 75,000 Muslims that live in Broward County, Florida. That is a number that is shocking even to the average person, because the truth is that they're very insulated as well. And they kind of stay out of the political stuff. They ain't staying out anymore. This is on a whole level now. And a lot of them are just as affluent, and they are 10 times as angry because they are not the cause of this plight. The truth of the matter is that this is the result of colonization of the worst kind. And we have been protecting it for quite some time. But once the cat's out of the bag, you can't put it back in. So let's round out the video and see whatever wonderful things are still taking place at the university that is very close to where you reside.
Take it easy, take it easy.
Do they have private security?
This is kind of an interesting situation because it doesn't look like that. If you look at all of these burly guys, like this guy's got an Israel shirt on, and the other guy had the dog tag on with "Bring them home."
Yeah, it looks like the private security.
Maybe. It wouldn't surprise me. But then again, at this point, nothing is surprising because, again, like I said, and this is what I've always maintained, and this is why I'm a huge advocate for labor, this is a class war, nothing more. Because there is a significant portion of the Jewish population that does not agree with this. They are not in favor of this. And a lot of it does fall on class lines. The more affluent you tend to fall, the more in favor of Israel and what they're doing. Whether you agree with what they're doing or not, more or less, you either do agree with it or you're not willing to fight against it because in your eyes, it's like, well, this is what we have to do to have our Jewish state because where else would we go? It's so... the logic has just been completely tossed out the window at this point. I don't know who they think they're going to appeal to, but every day that goes by, I feel like they lose more and more support, that there's more and more people that are looking the other way, right, or are just going to eventually go to the side of where the Palestinians are, because you can't ignore the violence. And if what's going on in the campuses are bad now, and everyone talks about the fact that school is ending in the next few weeks, what's going to happen when they have the Democratic National Convention in Chicago? I mean, really, it is like 1968 all over again. And a little caveat that I will now announce on the show that a lot of you people out there are not aware of, but the Democratic Party of Florida is having their state convention this weekend in Orlando, Florida. And you want to know who the keynote speakers of the event is? One of them is
APAC?
Rick Wilson. Who'd you say?
Is that like a representative from APAC? APAC?
Oh, we'll get to that. One of them is Rick Wilson, who was one of the biggest GOP operatives for the longest time. And
Islamophobic as fuck.
Oh, God, yeah. Just look back at his old tweets. My God, he's a bastard. But that's just the appetizer. The entree is John Fetterman. This is who they
APAC.
got.
Cool.
This is who they got. Of all the people in the United States, I even said to the people in PDA, Alan Minsky's people, I even said, why don't you just have Wasserman Schultz be the keynote speaker if you're going to get Fetterman? Like, why even bother? Why don't you just have her? Why even spend the money? She's going to be there anyway. They're both going to say the exact same thing. So why don't you just let her do it? And why don't you let them do it with an Israeli flag draped around them in that room? If you think that the Democratic Party has the moral authority over the GOP, they don't. They don't.
Nope. I think more people are waking up to this realization as well. What is the discernible difference between the Democrats and the Republicans? What is it?
Well, when you think, and again, as a childbearing age woman, and everyone's so concerned about your ability to reproduce at your discretion, it is always interesting when there have been so many opportunities over the years where a woman's right to choose could have been codified easily, many, many times. But why do it when it is a cash cow? And for the not so informed individual who is thinking about what they're going to vote for, they do make that decision of, well, abortion's very important to me. Well, here's the thing. In the state of Florida, we all know that this state is going to go red in November. With that being said,
read already.
Well, I'm talking about at the polls.
Okay.
However, we do have two very substantial ballot initiatives. That is something that Florida does very well. We've got cannabis legalization, and we've got codifying women's right to choose. Now, if you ask me, those are two ballot initiatives that will get people out to the polls.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Democratic Party thinks that they're going to attach themselves to these two ballot initiatives and say, you have to vote for us if you're going to support these ballot initiatives, this is going to hurt their chances of those ballot initiatives passing at the polls, because people will cut off their nose to spite their face. That is a fact. There are many people in this country who will vote for Trump as an FU to the liberal class.
I hate to think about it in those terms, but also what's going to stop a Floridian from thinking to themselves, well, what if the state legislation just overrules, vetoes this ballot initiative like they did minimum wage? Wasn't that a referendum vote that passed last election cycle or two?
That's a fair point, but here's the problem with the minimum wage. You're asking, it's not as, I mean, I personally am not a big fan of the minimum wage. I'm a fan of a living wage. The problem that you deal with when it comes to the minimum wage is that because we have completely neglected dealing with raising it in accordance with where it should have been over the past several decades, where the minimum wage should be today, if it had kept up with inflation, is probably closer to somewhere between $20 and $25 an hour. And so since we're not there, and now what you're doing is you're asking these small businesses to have to put themselves in a position financially that they're not capable of doing, because you've got cost of living that is ridiculously high. The insurance in Florida is absolutely insane. We are all kinds of effed up in that regard. When it comes to something like cannabis legalization and women's right to choose, that I think is different in the sense that there's less of the burden on the individual and more so on the state to follow the law. Now, if they do pass it and they still think that they're going to play this, religious bullshit about a woman's right to choose or not, I think that that's going to create a much bigger problem politically that is not going to go well when you have the governor election in what will be an open seat in 2026. Now, granted, again, this state definitely leans red. There's no two ways about it. But that can ultimately end up becoming a really big campaign driver, if that even is possible in this state, if they choose to ignore it. So I don't know what's going to happen. But what I do know is when the people have the opportunity to actually vote on something that matters to the majority, or in some cases, overwhelming majority of where people stand in this country, they will vote for it. And they'll vote for it accordingly. They did it in Ohio. They did it in Kentucky. They did it in Kansas. They did it in Montana. All very red states. And they still voted red. And they voted to codify a woman's right to choose easily. Even though you had in Ohio that Illinois billionaire trust fund baby who, inherited this money from, I guess, like their paper company. And he spent tens of millions of dollars on advertising to prevent a woman's right to choose ballot initiative from passing. Didn't work. Because I think when the people have an opportunity to have their say, they're going to have their say. And I think that all comes full circle back to what's going on with Israel. I think the fact that AIPAC has been exposed so deliberately and so blatantly, you can't look at the way they operate. The fact that they are not registered as a foreign agent, to me, there is no way to explain it other than they have bought our government, and our government does not follow this book anymore. Our Constitution is not, it doesn't exist anymore. This was supposed to be the most important document we had. And now it's basically rendered to nothing. It's subjective. At times, people will decide that they want to enforce it, and other times they'll decide, well, these people are above reproach. And you know what ends up happening, Amy, when we reach that point? People start losing faith in the democratic process. And when that happens, oh boy, good luck getting it back. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Because people don't trust the system anymore. And you know what? They shouldn't, because the system's broken.
Fair point. I actually believe that the Constitution was always intended to work just like this. It was always intended to be interpreted in a variety of ways. It was always intended to ultimately benefit the upper echelon of society. And so I'm not necessarily, I understand some people feel as though this is a real wake-up call, but to me, I think this is just the system working as intended in many ways. I think it's unfortunate that the way that people have woken up to this realization is that they have seen a genocide take place live in real time. They have seen babies' heads blown the fuck off. They have seen the way that a fascist police state can ultimately strip away one's own First Amendment rights that up until this point, people thought was sacred, protected. Turns out it's not the case. And we're not talking about what's going on in Gaza. We're talking about what's going on in Columbia University, in UCLA, and elsewhere. This is happening in this country. And it has been for quite some time, but it's only now starting to be realized by as many people who have realized what's going on.
And it's all by design.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want us talking about the issues that matter at all, because that would require them to examine the very broken system that we have in front of us. But now you're going to get it to a point where the faith in that system is just completely falling apart. And that's why, again, you cannot put your faith in, I mean, look, electoral politics matters, but it is not the driving force, and it never will be. That's why when you see all the talking heads losing their minds about why won't you support Joe or this or that, and it's always the liberal class that's like that. The conservative class doesn't care. To them, they just know how to win.
Yeah. Well, I think that the electoral system is also designed to only work for the smaller minority of rich folk. And the differentiating factor might be that some are less racist and less awful. And that's what the Democrats have really prided themselves on over the last couple of years, to be sure. I mean, at least we're not as bad as Trump. I mean,
are they? But are they, though? I don't think so. I think Trump is the greatest political football that the neo-liberal, neocon class could have ever hoped for. Ever. That's why they're able to get away with this. That's why they're able to make statements like this from earlier today.
It's basically a matter of fairness. It's a matter of what's right. There's the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos.
Who's causing the chaos, President Biden? Because it sure as hell ain't the people protesting Free Palestine.
He just looks like a claymation. He just looks like a little claymation doll. Yeah,
he's like a wax figure.
He's like, I'm about to lean into some conspiracy theories. Like,
no, I think he's alive. I think he's alive, but I think that he is without question, especially when he has to go in front of a national TV audience. He's given some type of a cocktail, whatever it is. Again, he is the leader of the free world. So whatever is the most advanced, type of serum that could be given to get you to get through, let's say, like an hour and a half State of the Union speech, then that's what you're going to get. Because we've seen him when he is coherent, and then we have obviously seen how bad it could be when he's incoherent. And when he's incoherent, it is really, really bad. But he's out there giving a speech that basically, did Netanyahu write the text for him? I mean, that's kind of what you're wondering, but it's going to get worse.
People have the right to get an education, the right to get a degree, the right to walk across the campus safely without fear of being attacked. But let's be clear about this as well. There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students.
You know what I think it is? I think that he definitely got his, daily dose of methamphetamine cocktail, but it seems like he's in between facelifts. So, like, his eyes look like he's fighting for his life, but he didn't sound as bad as he can sound. And what was coming out of his mouth was just complete hot garbage. That did sound like he was taking notes directly from Benjamin Netanyahu for sure. And this is the reason why he's going to lose. I mean, at this point, he can't be surprised. I mean, I don't know what his advisors are telling him. I don't know what their strategies are. It's not working. I just find it hard to believe that he actually thinks he has a standing chance at this point. But again, like, he's not really with us. So, like, maybe he's not in a position to even care about, like, maybe he's not even sure that, you know, he's running a re-election campaign right now. Because, like, it seems like everything that you could do wrong in your re-election campaign, Joe Biden has done and exceeded expectations. It's remarkable.
And he can't even keep his eyes open. And this is what I try to explain to people. I'm like, it's like you could run dental floss across his eyes. That's how it's. And again, it is a form of elder abuse. There's no question about it. It's one thing for him to have to get through this term. It's another thing entirely that you think that in his current state that he is capable of resembling any form of the leader of the free world until January 20th, 2029. That is so irresponsible. And, you know, when people try to chastise those that want to look in another direction, it's incredible how low they're willing to sink. And I think the Democratic Party, personally, I think they're losing an entire generation of voters. They may be losing 2 generations. Like, this is getting very dangerous, and all for one reason and one reason only. They had to stop Bernie Sanders. That's it. And Bernie was not willing to fight the way Trump was willing to fight, and that's why he didn't become president. Now, granted...
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought democracy was on the ballot, and that's the reason why Joe Biden decided to run again for a second term. He's fighting for democracy, man. Come on, man. Look, what would we do without him?
He's a good friend, and he's doing the best job that he can. It's like, Bernie, God,
can you say oligarchy?
Oligarchy.
That's good. That's good.
We are not a democracy. We've never been a democracy. I know. I'm from Brooklyn and I live in Vermont. I could tell you, this is our country. This is what's happened. But that Bernie in 2016, 2015, he was something. He was something special. Whatever happened, and I went to Philly for the convention in 2016. Something happened. Somebody got to him. I don't know what the hell it was. It could be something as simple as saying, yeah, you know that stuff that your wife is involved in with that college up in Vermont. Yeah, we're gonna make life very difficult for you if you don't start doing what we tell you to do. Or it could be something even more sinister than that. You never know. But I know that the Bernie Sanders that ran for president the first time, that was something very special. And there was something very special that was taken from us. And I do think the country may have been heading for a collision course with these types of circumstances no matter what. But I do think if Bernie did become the president in 2016, I think we would have gotten some things that would have helped this country a lot. Even though the system clearly has to break, and maybe this is just being accelerated at this point, I do think Bernie would have been what the country desperately needed in 2016, and we would have been better for it. And who knows where we'd be right now, because there's no question that he would be finishing out his second term right now as we speak. But this is what we're freaking stuck with, and now we're gonna run it back again with Trump, and it's just, yeah, we're in a very bad timeline. But let's finish it up.
There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or discrimination against Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans. It's simply wrong. There's no place for racism in America. It's all wrong. It's un-American. I understand people have strong feelings and deep convictions. In America, we respect the right and protect the right for them to express that. But it doesn't mean anything goes. It needs to be done without violence, without destruction, without hate, and within the law. You know, make no mistake, as president, I will always defend free speech, and I will always be just as strong in standing up for the rule of law. That's my responsibility to you, the American people, my obligation to the Constitution. Thank you very much.
I mean, I have to remind myself that the things that he says are what he's being told to say. This isn't a question of whether this is what he's really thinking or is even capable of thinking at this point.
Well, we know what he's thinking. He's said multiple times that he is a Zionist. So,
and he's proud of it. Very proud of it. And that's the hypocrisy of Catholicism, because he's Irish Catholic. He is a hypocrite. But then again, how do you become the leader of the free world unless you're on that type of a level?
Well, I don't think that religion means anything to any president. I think they just say that to try to appeal to a group of people, usually who are squarely Republican, as part of like your overall profile as a presidential candidate. Are you a good man of faith? Would I want to get a beer with you? Those seem to be like some of the, main criteria that people use to determine whether or not they like a guy and will vote for him.
Hey, look, I remember the same bullshit that was taking place when I was, at the end of high school, when, everyone was saying, oh, I totally want to have a beer with Bush. It's like, this is the reason you want to vote for somebody? Like, I'm a teenager and I'm looking at this and just thinking, this doesn't make sense. Like, this is the premium you put on voting for the person who's going to lead this country. Yeah, George Bush had a better personality than Al Gore, but that's what you're going to base your vote on?
Says who? Says who? Like, he was kind of painted as a cool guy, and then like the whole would you want to have a beer with him? I'm pretty sure that was like a Fox News talking point that started to become normalized. I think picked up by liberal mainstream media, or CNN or MSNBC. I don't even know how they categorize themselves at this
well,
point.
Of course, but the thing that always upset me the most about that circumstance, and the fact that they always say, again, this is like the whole thing about everyone complaining Trump doesn't accept the results of the election. You said he was a fraud president for 4 years. You said he didn't really win. You said it every day, all day, on every street, every place. What did you think was going to happen when he had the opportunity to throw it back at you? Did you think he was just going to sit on his hands and not do anything? Did you think the GOP was not going to do anything about it? George W. Bush was an illegitimate president. It was proven beyond any doubt that he and his people rigged the election in 2000, specifically in the state of Florida. It was proven that when the recount was officially done in 2002, that Gore actually won the state, even in spite of all the bullshit that went on.
Yeah, with Jeb, who removed how many black voters from the rolls, like made them unable to vote without their knowing. They'd show up to vote and they found out that they were not registered.
That ballot or whatever, the provisional ballot. Anytime somebody tells you you're going to get a provisional ballot, record it and send it all over social media, because what they are doing is deliberately rigging an election. There are many ways to rig elections. Many ways. Don't think it's just they totally rigged it against me. I'm totally persecuted. It's all their fault. I'm a totally persecuted guy. And it's like, again, when he does it, it's all about what is self-serving for him. Trump doesn't care about anybody but himself. And I think I would like to believe that most people can accept that reality. However, as bad as Trump can be, he is nothing compared to how bad this system is. To how
it's a byproduct of it.
100%. How else could a guy like him ever get to the top of the mountain unless the very system that was fighting against him is that much worse? The idea that the Democratic Party establishment welcomed somebody like Bill Kristol with open arms, somebody like John Brennan with open arms, David Frum with open arms, Jennifer Rubin with open arms, Nicole Wallace with open arms. These are all war criminals, all of them, at high levels and not so high levels, but they're all part of it. And no one was a bigger war criminal than Dick Cheney. And the idea that because they're not Trump, like I said, Trump is the greatest gift in the history of corrupt politics. Everything that they accused him of doing is being done now and they're saying, well, I know we suck, but I can assure you he'll come in and do it just a little worse than us. So you just have to accept the shit sandwich we've given you, and you got to keep eating it.
Yep. I think it's just another we're seeing the cycle of political violence just kind of reach a new era, a new level, if you will. Because I do think that the reason why Donald Trump was so appealing in the first place was from decades of failed neoliberal policy and everything from privatization of enterprise, outsourcing manufacturing jobs overseas, moving away from manufacturing as the foundation for a lot of good high-paying jobs, to franchises where people had to denigrate themselves to whatever jobs were available at the time. That was, working for whatever fast food chain or whatever franchise was hiring. I think that we saw a large transfer of wealth from the working class that was never recovered, that has solidified the class war between the 99 and the 1%. And again, this is why I blame so much on Reagan, because of what he put into effect. And I do think that Donald Trump coming in as an outsider, promising to not play by the political rules, draining the swamp. And, a lot of people were quite interested to hear that he was willing to run the country like a business, not knowing that he is a failed businessman. He has filed for bankruptcy multiple times. And one of the reasons why he is rich is because he inherited it from his father and takes advantage of all of the opportunities.
You're totally wrong. Totally wrong. That's not true. All that I did was I inherited a small loan. It was a small loan of $1 million. It was only $1 million. It's a very small amount. And I built my real estate empire off of that. Now, I went bankrupt a number of times, but listen, that's the cost of doing business. Remember, it's rugged individualism for the regular people. It's socialism for the rich. That's the way it works. And I've done a really great job. Have you seen Trump Tower? It's really great. Doing a great job. Sorry, just had to put that out there.
No, that's exactly right, because he did sell a lot of people on this idea that he earned every single penny that he has ever stolen, and people eat that shit up. Remember, like when he was talking to Hillary Rodham Clinton, he was like, because Hillary Clinton was just like, "Bitch, you don't pay your taxes." Not realizing that she was going to have to do a little more, but really did think that all she would have to do was point out how brazenly corrupt Trump was, and people would come to their senses. And he literally was like, makes me smart, took advantage of all the opportunities our government gives us to not pay our taxes.
Actually,
what do you want from me?
Yeah, but Trump gave the best rebuttal I've ever seen. That was really what crushed her. I mean, he crushed her when he said that's because you'd be in jail. But the other thing that he did was when she's like, you don't pay your taxes, like, you know what, Hillary? I don't have to pay my taxes because you passed laws that don't require me to. And I was like, game, set, match, it's over. And I was right. I had a feeling at the end he was going to pull it off, and he did. Because the truth is that even with everything working against him, there were kernels of truth in the things that he said that really stuck with people. Trump is only saying what he's saying because, again, everything is self-serving. It doesn't mean that it's not true. And that's the thing that people have to remember about why the system is broken. If the billionaire class pays off a politician to enact a certain law, like right now, with the very few exceptions of those that are not bought, which is a small swath of the Democratic Party and an even smaller swath of the Republican Party, particularly led by Thomas Massie, all they have to do is just put whatever stupid law they want to put out there and just basically equate anything that is negative against Israel is anti-Semitism. And they can get them to pass laws like that basically shit on this document. Yes, I know this document is really meant for certain people, but the truth is we are supposed to be a nation that has a set of laws that we should be able to rely on that protect us. And even if it was just a myth, now it is completely wide open. There is no second guessing anymore what our nation is, how it is formed, how it is formatted, and who it protects and who it doesn't. It protects a very small portion of the nation, the very rich, the very affluent, and the very influential. That's it. Everybody else, you're on your own. And to prove this point, if anybody thinks, and again, I'm not advocating for Trump, I'm not advocating for Biden, but if you have any doubt whatsoever, not saying it would be worse under Trump, but if you think it would be any different, this is our final clip for tonight. But this was from earlier today.
The anti-Semitism, the hatred of Israel by so many people. You go back 10 years, I mean, Israel was protected by Congress, and now Congress is just doing numbers that are unbelievable with, I think, a very, very small group of people within Congress, and it's got to stop. But we have to go back to the roots. We have to protect. We have to stop the anti-Semitism that's just pervading our country right now, and Biden has to do something. You have to get the job done. It's a horrible job to do, but they have to respond when they do. When there's an attack, a sneak attack, like on October 7th, that's so violent and such hatred, you have to clean it out. You have to clean out the cancer, and you have to let them do their job. And frankly, it has to be done fast, because this.
He really has a way with words, doesn't he?
I mean, I think that he's familiar with what he needs to say to stay in the good graces of the politically motivated Zionists, seeing as though he has close familial ties with one family, the Jared Kushner, who, remember, was in charge of peace in the Middle East. And what did he do when he was working for Trump? He literally just moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
And then you had him at the Kennedy School at Harvard saying, that Gaza Strip, that looks like a nice bit of beachfront property we could get our hands on over there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
God. And it's always, isn't it always amazing? It is always the pencil neck motherfuckers that are always the ones doing that shit. It's always the ones who are like, they're almost like effeminate in their disposition. They're the biggest little bitches alive, and yet they're
the most spoiled. They're the most sheltered.
And without hesitation, they are the very first to say, drop the bombs. The very first.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is scary. But the Donald has a little bit more to say before we wrap this up.
This is not sustainable for anybody. The job has to be done. It has to be done fast. The United States has to get courage, and the United States has to speak up. Nobody knows where the U.S. stands right now. I think Biden is not on the side of Israel, and he's making a tremendous mistake. You have to clean up the terror that we witnessed on October 7th. But the bottom line is they have to be able to finish the job. You have to let them finish the job. You have to support them, but they have to do it quickly. And you can't let scenes like this. The head of Columbia should be ashamed of herself. The job that she's done, she should no longer be there. She should be absolutely ashamed, because she let this take place, Sean.
That's sorry.
The thing about his politicking, which I've always found to be so measured and precise, especially when he won the first time, he always found a way to get to the left of Hillary or of Biden. But on this issue of Israel, he's getting to the right of Biden, which is just, you have to do it quickly. You have to take care. Like, do what exactly? You mean just genocide the hell out of them? I mean, my God, what the fuck?
I think Donald Trump knows that there's not enough people from within the Republican Party who's going to say to themselves, you know what? I was going to vote for Donald Trump, but seeing as though he is actively encouraging Israel finish the genocidal campaign, I just can no longer bring myself to support the guy. So he's not really losing any political I guess, ties to important voting blocks or constituents, He's not losing any political or social capital, let's just put it that way. Whereas Joe Biden, because he represents the Democratic Party, you know, the big tent party, who actually does not give a flying fuck about the very people they tend to pander to when they are trying to score cheap political points, usually on the campaign trail. They recognize that minorities are important to them insofar as if you can get them to realize just how bad their life could be under another Republican administration, they might just show up and vote for Democrats out of desperation. Like, my metaphor that I use to describe the Democrat and Republican Party lately is that both of these parties are on a boat watching us drown. We're drowning. We're fighting for air. We're gasping for breath. Neither are saving us. But the Republicans are celebrating our death, our suffering, our destruction. They're proud. They're happy. They're having a good time. And the Democrats are just planning their eulogy, their 10-minute moment of silence, kneeling in a kente cloth. They are so performative that they only care about how they appear from the outside perspective. And if they can just convince people that they give a shit, well, that's all they're really after anyway. So long as it's enough to induce somebody's fear, fight, or flight response to the point that they end up going to vote, you know, in spite of all of the reasons why they don't want to. So I just think that's why Biden is kind of fucked. And Donald Trump can say those things and not really lose a lot of support at all. Because the people who are going to show up and vote for Donald Trump, they didn't give a fuck about Palestinians anyway.
No, I think that I don't know what to think at this point, because I know that there is a significant anti-war push on the right, but it has a lot more to do with the libertarian isolationism type mindset. You know, and then of course, obviously the spending on war, which is again pointless. But you know, you take your wins where you could get them with people that, you know, may not share similar philosophies on economics. However, one of the big problems that I see is that we kind of are in this like really weird spot right now, because RFK would have an opportunity of a lifetime if he figured out that being in favor of the Palestinian people is actually a path that could actually win him the presidency, as crazy as that is to even suggest at this point. But his attachment to Rabbi Shmuley is it's so bad and so wrong on so many levels that you almost have to wonder if they've got something on him. Like, I never generally think that, but in his case, I think there's something more than what meets the eye, because anyone who affiliates with somebody like Shmuley has to be half-cocked insane, as far as I'm concerned. Then you have, obviously, Dr. Cornel West, who I don't really know if he's really running for president. I kind of get the impression that he's basically just trying to keep people's spirits up, because if you're going for ballot access, despite all the problems that the Green Party has, that would have been your one shot with the type of candidate that I think could have really made a significant impact from the left. But he's not on that ticket anymore. You know, like, I don't really have an issue with Jill Stein. She was on the podcast a couple of months ago. You know, I don't think she's I don't think she has the capability in terms of being an inspirational candidate, in terms of rallying people the way that it needs to be rallied right now. I just think we're in a very, very bad place, and a lot of lack of faith, if that makes sense, in what's going on right now. And it is sad. But with that said, I still maintain that we've always been the people that we're waiting for. I know people kind of, you know, need to be led, need to have their hand held. But the truth is, this is a labor revolution that's just kind of waiting to happen. It's not a matter of could it happen. It could happen. It could happen tomorrow. A general strike could happen tomorrow if people finally got their shit together. I do think every day that goes by, more and more people are getting that. Mm-hmm. It's just a question of what is it going to take? I don't know. But I even suggested to just people that are with PDA, I said, look, the idea that the Democratic Party of Florida that wants you to believe that this state is somehow competitive for the general election, for the electoral votes in the state, that's fine. Just the idea that you would have somebody like Fetterman be your speaker out of all the people that you could get. You get him, and you know that this is a very hot button issue here in the state of Florida, and that's the direction you choose to go in. Who are you appealing to? Like, who are you trying to make an impression on? Can't be anybody good. So I think that at some point, we do have to recognize that while electoral politics does matter, it's not what's going to change. It's not going to change anything. What will change it is when the people finally unite around a working class agenda. When that happens, that's when change is going to happen. And I do think that there is a very distinct difference between those that are in support of free Palestine and those that are pro-Israel. I think it really is the shareholder class versus the labor class. That's, in a lot of ways, I think it's shaped up that way. How do you see it as we wind down?
I think that class-based politics plays an important role. I do think that you have a large faction of people who are suffering economically and are not used to being so down on their luck. And unfortunately, because they are more likely to fall victim to propaganda and misinformation, they tend to look within, their own class to place the blame for their own unfortunate circumstances. And I'm not so sure what it'll take for the propaganda to no longer have that stranglehold over as many people as we have seen. Now, I know that from within the Democratic Party, a lot of people have woken up to the propaganda, to the concept of manufacturing consent. They no longer see the Democrats in the same light because of how they have been remaining steadfast in their unequivocal support for Israel and the genocidal campaign that they are carrying out right now in real time. I don't have a lot of faith in any current political leadership, and I do think that any revolutionary change that will occur will happen at a grassroots level. But I'm not necessarily sure how many more people who kind of fall in this category of like the middle class will have to start suffering until there is enough political influence to swing, the pendulum in favor of the working class. And time's kind of ticking, but I do think that that is kind of the necessary component here that must occur. More people will have to start suffering financially. Their material conditions will have to dramatically change in order for them to see that they're actually within the class of people who are right now fighting for their lives in many cases, who are calling for a free Palestine. And I don't know how long that'll take for more people who like to consider themselves somewhere in the middle to accept that they're working class, baby. You're one of us. You're a member of the proletariat. It's not as scary as you think. It's actually in your best interest to side with the working class that you are a part of, despite what Fox News pundits or Republican politicians are telling you, that these little Gazas are really the stain on society. Did you hear that? Did you hear about Tom Cotton?
Yeah, Cotton. Well, Cotton's a psycho.
Talking about those little Gazas, those little freaks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, he has a reputation. Again, him and Lindsey Graham basically go back and forth, like trying to prove, who's got more hawk tendencies within their, political arsenal as far as anything that they can go after. Because again, this is what happens when you're completely corporate captured and of the worst kind of people. Mm-hmm. It's difficult enough, but we have to deal with it down here. Obviously, what Jen's gotten herself into. Mm-hmm. Wasserman Schultz is of all the people in politics that are in favor of what Israel is doing, not only is she in favor of it, but she was one of, I think, 7 or 8 congressional members that was invited, right after Schumer made his speech on the Senate floor, saying that you guys got to back off a little bit, like this is insane. And then the next thing you know, she's in Jerusalem meeting with Bibi directly, and then taking a publicity photo, and she's the congressional representative standing next to him. I mean, that is tough. It is tough.
Think about the role that she plays within the DNC. Isn't she the reason why Bernie was not elected in 2016? Isn't that the reason why he didn't win the primary?
You see, the thing about her that people need to be reminded, it isn't just the perception of what her role was or wasn't in 2016. But here's something that cannot be denied. When she was the head of the DNC, and keep in mind that Obama tried to get her out in 2012. And you know why she wasn't out in 2012? Because she pulled the anti-Semite card on Obama. That is something people forget, but I didn't forget it. And what ended up happening in the midterm elections of 2014, another devastating blow to the Democratic Party, Wasserman Schultz was spending money like you would during a presidential election year. And most of it was on the consultant class. And as a result, the DNC went into the red. And that's when the Clintons came in with their Clinton Foundation money. And lo and behold, the Democratic Party had money again. But of course, we all know what that entails. That entails a little quid pro quo, and the Clintons don't do any business other than quid pro quo. And so that's ostensibly how it happened. That's how the primary in 2016 was set in motion. It's because of the actions of the head of the DNC chair over the course of the 5 years that she ran the operation. People forget she was the campaign co-chair of Hillary Clinton in 2008. This is the thing. It's like with Buttigieg. You think he's going away? That guy is plotting for 2028. And what is he plotting? Well, he happens to live in the state of Michigan now. Why would he do that? Well, because, funny enough, the current governor of the state of Michigan, she's going to run for president in 2028, despite what's happening in places like Kalamazoo and Flint. Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck about what's happening to the Muslim community? Gretchen Whitmer's going to run for president. And you know what's going to happen next? Pete Buttigieg is going to run for governor. These people plan these things out way in advance. The problem with our movements is that we don't think that far ahead. We don't play chess the way that they do. And that's how we have to do it. I have faith. I have belief that something big could happen down here in just, about 3.5 months. It would be wonderful. But that's not what's going to save us. What will save us is if we finally put our differences aside and recognize that, like you said, with very few exceptions, we are all the working class. And now more than ever, we really are. Like, it is at such a scary level. I'm going to leave you with this because I know you'll probably text me and be like, how the hell could you do this for a living? I was at an event this evening, and I met this lady who does we'll just say like a very unique form of Airbnb-ing in Miami. Was telling me how she was able to get what normally would be a property that can house, let's say, 3 beds, and figuring out a way to turn it into 7 beds. And why
micro apartments?
Oh yeah, that's what they're into now. And they're like, well, it's for low income people. And I feel like it's like I want to tell her, I don't care how nice of a property you think you're dressing this up as. You're a slumlord. That's what you are. You're just a slumlord in a different form. You don't care about these people at all. What you care about is how you can make as much money. Who wants to live like packed sardines? Nobody.
People just make the most of what they have available. We are forced to adapt to really uncomfortable circumstances. And I think that's just what people do when they opt to live in either a micro apartment or something like a shared living space where you have multiple people sharing the equivalent of a one-bedroom apartment. Those are really common in San Francisco as well. And people will do what they have to do.
I mean, at what point?
What else can they do? They're trying to survive by any means necessary. That's why I support squatting rights.
But at what point do people just throw their hands down and say, I'm not doing this. I'm not fucking doing this. And I don't care what we have to do in order to change those fortunes. We're going to change them. I don't want to see people suffering like this. They don't have to suffer like this. The system is broken. In Florida, it's pretty obvious. The reason why things are what they are is because Florida, really for the very rich, is a safe haven for them when it comes to being taxed.
Did you know that Florida has the highest amount of vacancies in the entire country?
Not a surprise.
Obviously, that makes sense.
But that is also something that speaks to a much bigger problem, which is, of course, the fact that we have a lot of internationals that also have bought up, a lot of foreign money, particularly in Southeast Florida. Again, Florida's unique in the fact that California is basically 3 different states. You've got the North, the Middle, and the South. But in Florida, you have like 5 different states. And it is unique the way that it kind of, shapes itself. I do think... I think the red-blue divide has been very effective for a very long time, but I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic that eventually that's just not going to work like it used to. I think we can unite. I think that people can get together. I think the conversations that you and I have, that a lot of others have, even though we don't agree 100% on everything, I think that these things are absolutely essential because the basic principles are things that we agree on. And I'd like to think that the overwhelming majority of people agree with those principles as well. We just have to figure out how to take power and how to do that the right way. And you can't be afraid. We're in very hard times right now. Now, the times can change for the better, but at some point, you have to stop looking at, people that maybe not agree with you on a variety of different... Again, this is why wedge issues are always at the forefront. This is why abortion is always one of the main topics of conversation when it comes to politics, because it always works. It always divides. But if you talk to people about their ability to put a roof over their head, that is a problem for probably 80 to 90% of this country right now. That is devastatingly bad. If it was 10% to 20% of the country having that problem, I would say that that's a crisis within itself. But now, this is fucking insane. Like, I don't know what we're waiting around for. I mean, Lord knows, like I said, I think it could change at any moment. This is no Super Friday. It's not about squatting rights. It's about people's ability.
I support squatting rights. I said that I support squatting rights. I do. I support squatters' rights for sure.
I don't support squatting rights, but that's a whole other story. Because again, people are squatting, but they're squatting because they can't afford to live.
Exactly.
This is a whole other story. It's one thing if you're
DeSantis rolled back every adverse possession law in your state, so you don't have to worry about squatters in Florida. They're not going to be rolling dice.
Listen, it's the same thing that happens in a state like Michigan with Whitmer. Anytime they sense that they have an opportunity to go for the gold, which is go for the whole thing, go for the shebang and become the president, everything changes. And it is always at the expense of the people that maybe just getting by, but now it's going to be accelerated to such an extent because the people with the ways and means, the billionaire, the ownership class, when they want something, they basically tell you, you want your $100 million to run for president? You want your $200 million to run for president? This is what we want. And this is what we're going to get. And that's it. And that's how it is. And it's so, oh God, and this is only surface level of what we know. We know that it is so much worse than what meets the eye. Beneath the surface, it is that much worse. And that is what should scare people. But that is why these conversations are important. And just because you agree with squatter rights and I don't, doesn't mean I think any differently of you. I think you're awesome, and I'm glad that we are having this conversation. And I do think that if we are not going to address the fact that we don't have a living wage, that we do not have universal health care, that we have cost of living that is out of control, because of corporate greed, that we have endless war, and that our planet's on fire with water that is unsafe to drink. Yeah, there's microplastics in all of our water. It's just a matter of how much. This is a problem. When do we say enough is enough? I don't know. But I hope we get there soon. Because it can get so much worse. It really can. And with that said, I'm glad you came on. How can people find you if they don't already know about you?
Well, thanks for having me. You can find me on twitch.tv/AmyeC3. I'm also on Twitter. I have a Substack. I actually just wrote about adverse possession laws and squatters' rights. If you want to check that out, I'm working on digitizing that episode of Housing News as we speak. So yeah, you can find me at AmyeC3 on Twitter, on Twitch, and then on Instagram, I'm AmyeC3_ because AmyeC3 was taken.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Big Dumb Animal, great supporter of the show. AmyeC3 is a great guest. I definitely agree with you on that one. And of course, our very awesome supporter, Teresa. Thank you so very much. We miss Jen. And yes, she is kicking ass and taking names. There will be an upcoming conversation that Jen will be having on AmyeC3's channel. Don't know exactly when that's happening, but it's in the works. So just keep an eye out.
It's going to be Sunday at noon.
This Sunday.
This Sunday. Moving fast. Right. We're doing an all-day event on Sunday. We're raising money, for her campaign. It'll be an all-day event, but she will be coming on in the beginning of the stream at noon. So yeah, it'll be in a couple of days.
Did I tell you I think you're pretty awesome? I think I might have mentioned that.
You have. You're not so bad yourself. I mean, I'm worried about you because I do think that if there is any bubble or any market that's going to crash, it's going to be the commercial mortgage-backed securities market. So,
yes. Well, it's going to happen in certain asset classes. It's not going to happen in all of them, and it is going to happen. I'm very diligent about the type of properties that we get involved with. The big one that we're involved with has a big Freddie Mac assumable loan that's good basically for the next decade at an interest rate that is definitely manageable, comparatively speaking, to everything we're dealing with right now. But for a lot of distressed properties that are out there, yeah, it's bad. And let me tell you, it is cutthroat, baby. It is commercial real estate. Oh, it's like, I mean, look, I like what I do. But I also know that this is cutthroat capitalism if there ever was, and it's pretty rough. So, but you're in California, and if you think it's bad in Florida, I can only imagine it's pretty rough.
Yeah, it's pretty bad everywhere. I get my monthly subscriptions from TREP that kind of keeps me in the loop about what's going on too. So credit to them. But
well,
yeah,
you definitely know your shit. You definitely know your shit. You're definitely.
I have to. I can't be walking in my dick swinging, not knowing what the hell I'm talking about. Like,
you have a dick?
I know.
Hey, listen.
Trans rights are human rights. I am absolutely, but it's a matter of expression because I literally come in absolutely fearless, except when I'm talking to, like, there was one exception where I was talking to an actual Nazi and it was actually very uncomfortable. But otherwise, you have to be bold and say everything with your chest.
I will. Well, I'm not saying anything. Not, Yeah. But what I will say is this: there was a group that wanted to have Jen come on and talk, and I basically started following their content. I came very close to having them on without completely flushing out exactly what they were all about. And then eventually I noticed that they were big fans of Nick Fuentes. And once that happened, I really dug into what they were about. And they're not in favor of free Palestine for the sake of free Palestine. They're in favor of free Palestine because they're anti-Semites.
Well, that's just them infiltrating the pro-Palestinian movement. That's where you gotta make sure that you're keeping Nazis out of. Punch them in the face while you're at it.
And there's a lot of psyops out there as well. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. They easily infiltrate these groups to break them up. It has worked for a very long time. Do not think for a second, especially ones that do not get blocked or shadow banned on social media, that advance violence, especially against Jews, that it isn't being done on purpose because, again, chaos is what is going to in their mind, prevent any type of systemic change that we need. But like you said, I think a lot of people are getting hip to the game now, and it's not working the way it used to. Just like being called an anti-Semite is not working the way that it used to. If you want to call me one, I don't care. I know what's right. And I know that what the Palestinian people are fighting for is their liberation. They have been colonized, and they're trying to break free of their oppressors. And that happens to be the Israelis. It is what it is. Let's keep fighting the good fight. Appreciate you.
I think it's funny that anybody who is like, oh my God, squatters' rights, you're in favor of squatters' rights. I know it's a little maybe counterintuitive, but I find it interesting when you have people who are both anti-squatters' rights, but also all in favor of Israel maintaining its apartheid state, where like they are the squatters. They're the ultimate squatters.
Amy, you live in Southern California. People are hypocrites, in case you haven't noticed.
Oh, I have.
People will say what they have to say to get what they want. And that is unfortunate, but that is the nature of the beast. Now, does it have to stay that way? No, because they're not the majority. They're the minority. They have a lot of power. They've had it for a long time, but maybe things are changing. Let's hope that let's hope that it does. Thanks for coming on. And guys, make sure you check out the stream on Sunday, AmyeC3. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'll talk soon.
Anytime. Bye. So, Firmware, thank you so much. Always appreciate those super stickers. Making a few bucks tonight is always a nice thing. And so what we're going to have is, like I said, continued conversation. I agree, Chris. It was a good conversation. And I'm glad to see we've had a decent number of people come in tonight. I'm sorry I've been off the air for a while. I'm going to try to get this thing to be a lot more consistent going forward. Danny. For those of you who don't know, it's the money is sent out first and then it's taxed. It is not the tax dollars that funds the government. I don't know why people can't put two and two together. It does seem pretty common sense. I don't know, just thinking. Remember, taxes are meant to curtail inflation. But the money we spend, the money we pay, we don't have a say. And yes, things are made out of clay. And I'll lay by the bay. I just may. The point is, some of these things seem so obvious. And yet, for so many, it just seems to get lost. The basics are lost. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm not too old for this shit. I feel very young for 41, I have to tell you. But that's because I maintain a healthy lifestyle. I think that that's a big part of it. And I would encourage all of you to do the same, especially in trying times. Eat right, work out, and get a good night's sleep. It's essential. And I don't always get a good night's sleep. I hope to get one tonight. And I'm definitely going to get some sleep this weekend. No two ways about it. But I've got to be there for our good friend, my colleague, because there are events this weekend that I'm going to need to attend. So it's not going to be all fun and games. But it's necessary. That's great, Don. And you know what? When you start doing those things, you'll feel amazing. And the one thing I will say to everybody, if you have a problem with certain types of food and certain types of, certain types of things as far as what your diet is constituted, if you can, at whatever cost, stay away from refined sugar. Just stay away from it. Cut it out, however which way you can. It's really, that's amazing, Don. And it's amazing how once you cut out sugar, the weight falls off. Intermittent fasting works. And big sugar is very bad, especially here in Florida. Now, make sure that if you're not having sugar, that you're also staying away from any diet supplement, type options like aspartame. That's as bad, if not worse, because of the chemicals that are in there. Now, natural sugar, I am actually an advocate for, particularly things like blueberries. I basically limit my sugar intake to any type of protein shake that I would make. And generally speaking, I will use blueberries as the main source. I'll use a small piece of banana too. And I do like my almond butter, but the sweets are kept to a minimum. It's actually the one thing that I have the easiest time resisting. I don't go out to eat on whatever occasions. What do I put in my cup? Oh, that's easy. Put in cream, half and half. That's very little. That in some cases, not even a gram of sugar. But that will at least give you some flavor. There's also unsweetened vanilla almond milk, which is good. Yeah, there's options. But getting away from the sugar is key, especially with coffee. And I will tell you this. If you can have coffee with little to no sugar, that is what is going to give you the boost that you need, where you're not going to constantly having to be drinking coffee throughout the day. It's probably the biggest reason why people will drink 3 or 4 cups of coffee in a day, because there's a crash period that comes with having that sugar. My goodness, a caramel macchiato? Why don't you just get a hot fudge sundae while you're at it? Because it has just as much sugar in it. That would make sense. So, kick the sugar, exercise pretty much every day, balance out weight training with things like Pilates, yoga, swimming, biking. They make a big difference. Ray J, I wouldn't expect you to say anything else. But pass on the whiskey. Stay away from rock stars, any of those energy drinks. Stay away from those. One thing that can work, which I highly recommend, there's no point in drinking diet peach tea. What I recommend is that if you're going to get tea, get peach tea, actual tea bag, and just put lemon. I'm telling you, it'll taste great. It really does make a difference. Thanks, Andrew. I really appreciate that one. But with that said, I appreciate you guys very much. I appreciate you sticking around, even though it's just me. But raw honey has some very healthy components that are very good for your body. So yes, I would agree with that. Yes. But remember, the only way it's effective is if you're eating right. And what I recommend, even though you can pretty much eat most, if not all, of what you want to eat if you're doing intermittent fasting, which is basically 16 hours on, 16 hours off, 8 hours on. So basically, if you have your first meal at 11 a.m., your last meal should be at 7 p.m. And that's the way that it cycles through. Like I said, refined sugar, stay away from that. Best type of carbs are sweet potatoes, quinoa, what else is good? What else is good? Sweet potato, quinoa. Try to limit the pasta, obviously. Eat your vegetables. Best vegetables are greens, spinach, asparagus, and broccoli. I'm pescatarian for the most part. I do make exception for turkey once in a while for a white meat. I do not eat red meat. I do not eat pork. I do not eat chicken. Salmon is great. Tuna is great. There's a lot of vegan food that's really good. All of this is relevant. Yes. If you want to hit the weights, you need a good source of protein as well. So, Danny, thank you for that. If there is a link, if you can email it, that would be wonderful. We definitely would want to cover that. As far as next week is concerned, it does look like, I mean, assuming, knock on wood, Jordan, if you're listening, I will be speaking with Jordan Chariton next week, going over the details of his documentary that he did, which was phenomenal if you haven't seen it. And a big shout out to Crystal Ball at Breaking Points for airing the Flint water crisis documentary. It is very tough to watch and to listen to, but it is necessary. So I recommend, if you want to check it out, make sure you get over there, get over to Breaking Points and get over to Status Coup and take a look at this very important documentary about what is still going on in Flint, Michigan. And so hopefully next week, most likely on Monday, we'll be speaking with Jordan Chariton of Status Coup News. Hopefully we'll have a crossover between the two channels. But with that said, Chris Garrett, Donald James, Danny Wyndham, You Don't Like My Music, Holly Horn, Yes But No, Ray J, Super Friday, Farmware, Travers with the Humor, Self-Care Maven, Sable Minor. Let's see. Who else am I forgetting? Anybody else? Anybody's Big Dumb Animal, of course. Calibri 1. Thank you very much for checking in. Teddy Cool. Thank you for checking in. Teresa, of course, with her tremendous support. Jimmy Zimzam. Great to see you, of course. Here Goes. Great to have you here, as always. Sandra Looney. Great to have you here. And who am I forgetting? Infinite Speed. And that is interesting. Intel won a contract from Israeli government to build factories and offices in southern Gaza. Why not build here and employ Americans instead of encroaching Gaza? Well, I'll tell you why. Because that is some really awesome real estate that Jared Kushner wants you to know that they're going to get their hands on. They're going to work really hard to do that. I don't agree with it, but just know that that is the intention. And that is why they're doing what they're doing. Everything is about dollars and cents. Remember, there is almost $1 trillion worth of natural gas under Gaza soil. That's a big part of it. John Nada, Jack Goodman. Let's see, is there anybody else? Anybody else that I have not acknowledged that came on here tonight? Kind People. I like that. It's a good name. I like Kind People. They're not easy to find. But when they show up, it does make a difference. So I think that that covers it all. I appreciate you all. I hope everybody is doing well, even in these very, very trying times. It is tough. But thank you all for sticking out with me. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Remember to like, subscribe, share, do all those things that we ask you to do. And if you would like to contribute, you can also go to our Patreon and, of course, leaving a super chat. And, of course, you can also go over to Cash App. Thank you all. See you Monday.